Hi, Joel here. Welcome to Module 4, the vision mindset. And our memory peg at this point in the story is the beginning of the Snowball fight. We're going to look at some negotiation skills from um, Chris Voss. That's the third aspect of the module. But before I go there with you, I'd like to review what we did during the last three modules, the first half of the course, because it's been pretty intuitive, and the advantage of intuitive is that it's kind of natural, it's easy to reapply, we learn by imitation. The problem is that it's easy to miss something. So let me go back. The first module was a lineup. We had two judges, one team, sorry, of two coaches who were deciding how they would pick up the kids for the snowball fight, the 2020 annual snowball fight. And they could not agree with each other. So we showed you how, we found out how, uh, since they had opposite judgment, they could not pick a person, but if we reorganize the ranking into a two-dimensional thing according to the snow field, we could actually start getting some good grasp on where to negotiate and whose player to look for first. And that actually is known as, in technical term, as a Nash equilibria, and in engineering term is called a Pareto curve. And we saw a Pareto ranking, and we saw that it actually works a little bit like the 80-20 rules, right? We had seven, if you remember, we had seven players that actually were first choice, and 93 that were all very good, but second choices. Now, this is a general pattern. You start with a confusion because you got multiple objectives and you actually split them in two. The little boy who woke up, Timmy, I think it was, who woke up in the morning and said, I'm going to go and play in the snow today. And his mom says, well, you got other things to do. That was also the similar pattern, right? We split between what Timmy wanted and what mom wanted, and also known as what's important and what's urgent, the so-called Eisenhower matrix. That's basically the same principle. You have the same principle also in spirituality. I said I wouldn't talk about it, but I like talking. In spirituality, uh, it's really important to measure, to take a grasp of what kind of thoughts come in the mind and which one to follow, which one not to follow. And one of the rules is to divide your thought between what do you want the thought and what you don't want, and what belongs to you and what does not belong to you. Because you heard it, because somebody whispered it to you, whatever reason. And so you get also this pattern, you see, of division of different judges, and then you can start negotiating between the judges. So that was um, the takeaway from the technique that we used in Module 1. Module 2, the self-inquiry, we saw the use of stories, both as powerful and also as ways to probe or subconscious or what the situation is, a way to understand the context. Now, if you remember from the webinar, if you haven't seen the webinar, please look at it. I think it's useful. We talked about the path from average to outstanding. Again, the devil's in the detail. I'm working on scrubbing the devil right now. we saw that at the end of the journey, from kindness to joy to energy to understanding context, there are various tools that you can use. And the memory map is one of them, but there's another one less known, which is called the McLuhan tetrad or the media tetrad, that consists of four questions that are always used, that can always apply to any artifact or concept. And the relationship between the McLuhan tetrad and the mind map, in my opinion, is that one is yang and the other one is yin. Enough of that. Again, everything in this course is public knowledge. Check it out. Double test what I say. See what works with you. This is what worked for me. So we have the notion of, we have this importance of finding context. And later we'll come back in a later lecture, later module, about ways to find context. And one of them is, we'll just broach over it because it's a very broad topic. But here I'm giving you pointers, basically. It's called system practice, and it's actually a social version of programming languages, because programming languages were invented to deal with complexity, things which are too complicated to actually keep in your own mind. So you have languages that make it easy. The third module was the snow fort, constructing the snow fort. It was about curiosity and competition, how competitions make team stronger, what is fair competition, and that actually feeds curiosity. We've seen paradoxes as a way to feed curiosity, and curiosity as being love of knowledge as opposed to a love of novelty. That was the most, I think, the most important lesson in that module. And that, as a caveat, that cause and effects are beyond statistics. You can't just plot a line into some data and draw a conclusion from that line. You have to look at which range it is defined, whether there's some subgroups and so forth. So you still need to think about cause and effect. So if as a scientist, somebody brought me actually 50,000 genes to analyze and see which one were upregulated or downregulated, that was only a fraction of the work, because after that, the biologists had to go back to the lab. They had to figure out, of the 1,000 genes I gave them, which one were related to inflammation. There were two. And then they had to figure out there was actually a mechanism going from the water to the inflammation to those genes. So actually they had to prove cause and effect after I showed them that there was some association between the two variables from my perspective. It was long story long, but basically don't trust a graph. Just think about what it means, and that's what I want to say to you. So, going back, here's my tetrad for vision. Vision enhances survival and gratitude. It obsoletes chaos and randomness. It retrieves serendipity, because things happen. Serendipity, sorry for my accent, is when good things happen at a good time and you haven't planned for them. But if you have a vision, they're more likely to happen. So it retrieves serendipity. And vision, when pushed to the extremes, goes into metaphysics and cynicism. That's my tetrad. You probably have a different one. So I encourage you to actually go and see what tetrad you can build around the vision mindset. So let's dive into module 4 of this course. We had a wonderful fight and everything was going swell And then not a rock that was thrown, not some kid that fell off and broke his ankle or his arm. No, a parent got distracted, put his foot on the curb, and ooh, real pain. So we had to bring him to the clinic. Timmy's dad has his left ankle hurt, so he cannot stand on it right now. The doctor says it's going to take about an hour and they'll be fine. But he noticed something that Timmy's dad has been sitting too long, that his ankles are getting weak and it's not going to get better. So he's going to give him some exercises to make his ankles stronger and give him some more balance since obviously he fell off. And what the doctor prescribed is what most doctors will prescribe, is what most trainers will prescribe, which is train the weakest link and then move on to the next weakest link and move on and move on. And so Timmy's father will have an app, and in the app will give him a number and tell him you're good or you need to do more of this, more of that. What the programmers have done is something else, because their mission is to get the code out as quickly as possible for the least amount of dollars or euros. And Timmy's dad has another perspective. Timmy's dads want to be strong and balanced on both ankles. So this is not a medical procedure. This is purely an example that I'm cooking up for the purpose of this course. The exercise that Timmy's dad will be given is to stand on one leg and to balance himself on one leg for a certain amount of time. And then once that leg is stronger than the other leg, switch the legs and keep doing that over the week, over 6 weeks, we'll say. So that's what the doctor recommends. So we'll look at what it looks like now. This is a simple graph of what the brochure says, and a lot of brochures in the business do the same thing. Work on the weakest link. Let me explain to you. Here is, on this axis, is how long Timmy's dad can stay on his right leg, balancing only on his right ankle. And here is a time from 0 seconds to 3 minutes where Timmy's dad can balance on his left leg. Now he hurt his left ankle, said he'll be fine in an hour, but just wanted to make sure. So we have him here. This point is where he's standing right now with barely a minute on, barely a few seconds, sorry, on the left ankle and about, what is it, 20 seconds on, well, 40 seconds on his right ankle. So the training I'll get is to reinforce his left ankle up to the point where after a week he's stronger on his left ankle than his right ankle. He can stay longer on his left ankle than his right ankle. Remember, it will be gone by one hour. The pain will be gone by 1 hour. And this is not a medical procedure. Let me repeat this again. Don't try that on your own. Now, after a week, he follows instruction and he goes on and he works on his right ankle and make it stronger until it reaches this point, which is almost half and half. And he keeps going and going until he reaches a point where he doesn't make any more progress. So those points where Timmy's father can stand on one leg for an extended period of time are favored over a period of time where Timmy's dad can actually stand for a short period of time on his on one ankle only, balance on one ankle. Well, when does that happen, right? If you can stand on one ankle for 3 minutes, surely you can stand for 1 second or 2 seconds. Well, the difference is that maybe he wants to be able to jump for 3 minutes, 180 times, and land stably, so that she's building strength in his ankle as opposed to just building balance and strength as a corollary of it, as a consequence. So this is what this here is just the formula that says you want to maximize the lesser time of left and right balance. And of course the points in the middle here on the middle lines are points where Timmy's dad is able to stand on one ankle as long as he stands on the other ankle. And typically we're not quite balanced. We have one which is stronger than the other. Now, here's what's Timmy's want, Timmy's dad's want. And what do the programmer or the engineers come up with? Now, be prepared. The engineers have decided that the best way to increase the strength is to actually increase the average of that. This is so common, you don't even see it, but we do that all the time. I'm a software engineer as well. And what's the trouble with that? You see, is that if you stand 20 seconds on the left ankle, but you're not able to stand at all on the right ankle, your average is 10 seconds. If you're able to stand 20 seconds on your right ankle, but not able to stand on the left ankle, you got the same average, 10 seconds. Any points on this line here has an average of 10 seconds. So the software that decides that Timmy's dad is at 10 does not make any difference between any points in here. Whereas what Timmy and the doctor want is that they are equally. See, the software engineers have a different perspective. They want the code out, giving results right away. The physician wants to cure his patients, and he wants to explain things simply to his patients so they can actually follow procedures and therefore have a better chance of being cured. And the patient, well, typically may not have a strategy, but he has a decision, he has a direct interest in the health of his body. So that's that. The distinction I would like to bring to you about vision. There's a view, which is not uncommon, of vision as being closed or open. The vision is open until it is set, and then it becomes closed, and the execution path becomes closed, and then people move forward. There's another view of vision that relates to a concept from architecture, which is positive and negative space. That's a general concept. That's why I'm bringing it up in the discussion here. In architecture, a positive space is typically a space that's pleasant. And people like it's open, it has a nice shape, and people like to congregate there to actually exchange, rest, reflect. That's a positive space. Concert hall might be one where people go and listen to music or listen to theater. A negative space, on the other hand, is a place with a negative pressure that pushes you out. The typical negative space is an escalator, a back lane of a commercial street. These are places where you don't deter, you don't stay there, you keep moving. You have the same thing in software. There's places in software where that's supposed to go very fast. Some places where it's user interface. So you can speak of positive and negative space there. You can also speak of positive and negative spaces for social media. Social media, initially Facebook started as a positive place where people would exchange ideas, exchange news about their family, their vacations, and pleasant, low volume, pleasant interaction. Facebook has moved, and no disrespect to Facebook, it has moved into a negative space where people have to marketing has to stop the scroll, as it said. It's a space where it's easy to swipe and swipe and swipe and never stop. You keep moving. So it has become a negative space in that technical term, not a value proposition, it's a technical term here. The vision is also a positive space where people are invited to reflect, exchange, and make propositions. The execution plan, on the other hand, where the brunt of the work is done, is keep moving and moving and moving. That's a negative space. So that's an important distinction that's actually pervasive in society, and I thought it was a good opportunity as we're discussing the vision mindset to bring this up. What space you keep positive and what space you keep negative, not in the term of bad vibe and good vibes, in terms of openness, in terms of welcoming, in terms of inclusions, in terms of being able to develop and progress and adapt to a situation. A vision can change depending on circumstances. What games? I'm going to propose you one game only. There's a lot of games on vision that you can find on the internet, but because the focus here has been on integrating multiple perspectives, I think the best game I can propose to you comes from Chris Voss' negotiation skills. Chris Voss, the Black Swan company proposes two techniques. One is mirroring and the other one is labeling. Mirroring is repeating the last words that somebody said. Somebody said? Yes, so you can actually get more information from what they said, more information that they may not have wanted to expose to you, not wanting to expose to you. Well, if you're in a negotiation, you won't tell everything. You want to keep your cards close to your chest. And it goes on like this. That's called mirroring. It doesn't have to be the last two words of a sentence. It can be any one, two, three words from the previous sentence. They don't have to be the first one. The last sentence doesn't have to be the last words. And it prompts people to actually open up and talk about themselves. So if you get people to open up, you're more likely to understand what their vision is, and then you may actually be able to get a better global overall vision. The other one is labeling. The underlying concept is that a negative emotion gets more positive when you label it, and a positive emotion becomes more positive when you label it. So it's a way to diffuse tension. And so here's the game. Make two groups, and each one writes a story, and you try to guess as much of the story as you can using labeling and mirroring. Very simple, but give it a try. So that's that for today. See you in the module 5. We have persistence and receptivity. Module 5 will be on persistence and complexity from a quantifiable perspective. So that's that. Enjoy your week. Take care. Bye.